Here's Ken's question. I would be curious if Jeff could explain. I love this. Let's send more questions for Jeff. If Jeff could explain his non-belief when looking at the origin of the universe. That's probably the biggest thing that makes me a believer in a higher power. The random chance of this world just showing up, and then all the different plants and animals that have evolved. I find it more logical that there was or is a creator. How that creator still interacts in his creation is another discussion. So, Jeff, can you explain what do you do with the origin of the universe?
Softball question. Very simple. And I want to say I'm flattered that you would ask me the origin of the universe rather than going to someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson or looking up old talks by Carl Sagan or someone like that. Forget those people. I've got the answer right here. All right. 13.7 billion years ago. Okay. I could attempt to regurgitate what other scientists have said, but you would be better off just looking them up on YouTube or reading their books or something. I'm not a scientific person. I believe these people to be experts and to be doing the best they can. It's just me regurgitating their findings, as I say. I was watching a bunch of videos this morning about the Big Bang theory and the origin of the universe, and I found one video that was a physicist saying her perspective, the Big Bang is the simplest explanation we know, and it's probably wrong. I found that fascinating and gives me an extra level of humility when I try to think about what is the origin of the universe. But to get out of the scientific explanation and to get a little bit more philosophical, I found this quote by Graham Oppy. Whatever range of options is open to the theist to explain the existence of God, exactly the same range of options is open to the naturalist to explain the existence of the universe. If it is open to the theist to say that God exists of necessity, then it is open to the naturalist to say the universe exists of necessity. Same can be said for an infinite regress, or if you want to say the existence of God has no explanation, then a naturalist could say the existence of the universe has no explanation. The postulation of a God who creates the universe does not bring with it any explanatory advantage. So I appreciate that quote. It kind of gets to the cliche debate of who created the universe? Well, God created the universe. Well, who created God then? Right? Wherever you want to start the discussion, either way, the line ends somewhere. So again, I don't know what to think about the cosmological science of it all. I'm part of me is tempted to just defer to deism, the idea that, well, maybe there is a God who, or some cosmic being, some unmoved mover who created all things and is just 100% hands off, right? And that's why we don't see miracles. That's why we don't hear God's voice when we ask to. Deism has a lot of answering power, but it doesn't tell us anything about how we should interact with God or what his personality is like, right? Simulation theory is a fascinating idea. The idea that we're all plugged into the matrix, basically, and we're just living a computer program that someone designed and may or may not be interacting with at the moment. This theory seems very silly to me. I don't personally believe in simulation theory, but I think it has more explanatory power about things like the problem of evil and divine hiddenness than the God of Abraham, who is all powerful and all loving and wants to have a relationship with us, is the ultimate creator. Because if that's the case, why the divine silence? Why the lack of miraculous intervention? So I will end with a final quote from Han Solo. Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. There's no mystical energy field that controls my destiny.
Okay, well, if you're going to use Han Solo, he was wrong about that. There is the Force. We know this.
It's true. I recognize the irony, and I figured I would be called out on that. And that's in your favor, Jeremy. If this was going to be a contest of who's going to win over who, maybe this is just the beginning of my origin story, and I'm currently lost in the wilderness, but someday I'll be the wise old sage explaining to the next generation why the Force is real after all.
It sounds a bit agnostic to me. Like you're kind of saying it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this. I don't really know. But it sounds like, and again, I'd love, tell me if I'm hearing this accurately, that it's almost like you don't start there. You start with the current experience, which is I don't see, the miraculous. I don't see God moving the way I think a God would move or should move. Therefore, I then work backwards and say, well, then this wasn't all created by God. Is that a fair kind of summary?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So then I would say, okay, if you could remove that part, which I think you articulate very well, and I'm not saying it's not valid. I'm just saying for the sake of this question, if you could suspend that and say, okay, with your current issues aside of what God does not do currently, if you just had to go, what is the most compelling origin story of all of this? Where would you land?
I guess that's why I chose to include a couple different quotes from a few different thinkers. But
I'm asking Jeff as the person, not. I'm not
allowed to defer to smarter people.
No, I want you as a human being.
I think it's an act of hubris to just pretend that we know the answer, right?
I'm not saying you know the answer. I'm saying which of the explanations would you say is most compelling to you? I don't think that's ego. I think you say, hey, of all that I've seen, this one resonates the most.
Okay. So it's either.
Is there one?
I get. All right. So I said that I don't believe in simulation theory, which is true, but I feel like it's a useful sort of parody of like cosmological arguments. I would say that either just the universe or physical matter in some form always existed, right? Which would be sort of the Big Bang scientific theory, or it could be deism, some form of God, whether it's like a personal God or just whatever, some supernatural thing that has no scientific explanation or physical matter or a spiritual being, whatever that means, could have created the world and then for whatever reason is no longer interested in interacting with it. I think that's a compelling answer in terms of it answers all of my questions, but it makes religion and union or relationship with God kind of meaningless as far as I can see it.
I think that's helpful to keep in mind as we talk, all of these, because even mine, I'm not claiming to know the answers to your questions. I'm just telling you the things that resonate the most with me that, I've heard or I've, most of the time, much smarter people have argued this. And that's why I often try, if I can remember where I read it, I try to, quote them. But I think that's what, gets all these conversations, in one sense, they're theoretical, right? Where we're talking like some nerdy, scientific stuff or nerdy theological stuff. But we approach these things as humans with a shared human experience where we're trying to make sense of what we experience day to day. And I think that's where it gets to a very just raw human emotion of you're going to land somewhere and something's going to make the most sense to you. And so I appreciate your feedback there.
I guess hopefully it's not too much of a cop-out to say I haven't landed yet in terms of answering that question of the origin of the universe.
But I think it's helpful to know, and I appreciate Ken's question. Okay, as the skeptic of the show, where do you land on some of these things, to give context for your own journey?